are the idea of perspective drawing and linear perspective. Now, the entire theory of perspective can be developed from a single fact. The apparent size of an object decreases with increasing distance from the eye. So what that means in regular talk is that the farther away something is from you, the smaller it is. Okay, that is the absolute fundamental of perspective. Okay. We have our vanishing point in the distance where all the lines converge in one point. And these lines that, you know, the diagrammatic lines that you lay out to measure from are called orthogonals. And I'm certainly not going to be expecting you to remember that, but that's what they're called. So orthogonals are the lines that you use to measure. And basically with one point, there is one point which everything converges at, and things get smaller the farther away they are from you, okay? And we talked about that with the case, and you have the case drawing that has the 1 point perspective in the back of it, okay? Now, the vanishing point does not have to be in the center, right? Here it is right in the middle, but it can also be to the left, to the right, like there's different, you know, in this one you have one vanishing point, but it doesn't have to be in the middle of the drawing, okay? It's just gonna change the way the orthogonals are drawn in when you lay out the drawing, okay? And if you have items that are not rectangles, you basically make a rectangle representing their actual size, and then you put the object inside. Like you see that car, you know, they've added some detailing to show you it's a car. If this was like a more circular car, you just would round things out within that rectangle box. So if it's not a box, then you just create a box and draw your shape inside it, and the orthogonals will squeeze your shape as it recedes from you. Okay, even if it is not a geometric hard edge shape. Okay. So here we have, I think we're in Montreal here, and it's the summertime or the fall, the leaves have fallen. And oh, look, there is our 1 point. I knew that this wasn't Paris because this is so Montreal, this picture, oh my God, right? And our 1 point, as you can see from this poor person who's dealing with the Montreal snow, right? Because it has the French architecture, right? It's lovely, but Paris does not get snow like this, you know? And those are our perspective lines, right? So we took a short trip. We actually took the train to go to Montreal for this lecture today because it's a fantastic city. And I actually might try to go next week. I haven't been to Montreal in a couple of years, and it has beautiful museums and had lovely French culture and a fantastic city. Montreal and Quebec City are both places you should visit because they're gorgeous. Okay. Here we have a train station drawing. And so we took the train to Montreal, and this was the train we took. I don't know if this actually is. This is not the Montreal train station, but it is a nice train station. But the 1 point is somewhere up here. You can connect all those lines to where the 1 point originates from. So again, the 1 point does not have to be center of the drawing. It can be shifted over. Like all of these, the 1 point was not in the center of the drawing, right? One was to the left, this one was to the right, this one is to the left, okay? But there is only one vanishing point. That's what you have to remember with 1 point. There's a single vanishing point. Look at that drawing. This looks like all the new Seneca buildings. They've been doing all these like beautiful new buildings, and this is so Seneca with like the vaulted spaces and all the glass in the windows. And the 1 point on this one you can see is in the right, about a third up from the bottom. If you go through those doors in the back on the right-hand side, eventually you'll hit the vanishing point right around there, okay? Vanishing point here is around the middle of that door at the exit sign in this hospital drawing. gorgeous drawing. You can see how value and rendering here can make a drawing so effective. Now that you are all super skilled, yes, there's definitely a ruler laying this out, Elle. You are correct. And then you go in and do all of that subtle shading. So this is inspiration for all of us on what you can use now that you know value and tone really nicely. When you add perspective and hard edges to it, you can do some gorgeous stuff with your drawings. Here we have someone's drawing of their home. I think these are like student work that I found on the internet. I probably went to DeviantArt, where they have a lot of great drawings by students. But this is, again, a 1 point. It's like beautifully rendered, lots of graphite happening, but there's still a 1 point perspective happening, basically the center of that door at the back of that hallway. Here we have 1 point at school. Reflections of a wet floor. Seneca when they mop the hallways. Here we have your room. So this is my students in residence have all they need. They've got their little fridge and everything else happening in res. All 1 point drawings here. Okay. So far we've talked about 1 point, which is the depth diminishes from the picture plane to one vanishing point. In 2 point, the depth and width diminish from the picture plane to 2 vanishing points. So, and 3 point, the depth, width, and height diminish from the picture plane to 3 vanishing points. So basically the theory on this is 1 point, you're looking at the object right on the front of it. 2 point, the object turns and you're looking at a corner. So you now have 2 vanishing points, and we're going to talk about how to draw 2 point right after this, right now. 3 point is the object has turned, and then it is like it is either flying above you or below you. And the main use of 3 point is in comic book art, okay? Anytime you have superheroes up in the air over a city, they will have a 3rd vanishing point to show that they are up in the air as well. And it gets really complicated. And as you'll see in the lecture, there's even more. There's 4 point, 5 point, but you're not going to be having to draw those. Okay. So drawing a 1 point, as we explored last week, is you look at the front of the object, and then you connect the 4 points of the edges to the vanishing point. Okay. You can see the horizon line is there. The vanishing point is there. And the orthogonals, those dotted lines, pull you back to show you how the object is receding away from you, okay? Then you put in the back of the object, okay? And this is all squared off, as Elle mentioned, with a ruler from the side of your page. One of the things I liked about that video was he was showing you how to use the that triangle measure and the T-bar, which was like, gave you a nice firm horizontal. And then he used that sliding triangle rule to get 45s and perfect verticals. And then you move the T-bar up and down. So if you're getting into hardcore drafting, those are the tools you need, okay? So the front of the object is squared off from the sides. The back is squared off from the sides. It is only the sides that recede, that change, right? Because this is horizontal, this is horizontal. Front is horizontal, back is horizontal. Then you draw in those lines and you erase the orthogonals you no longer need. So the diagrammatic line, the orthogonal line gets removed as you put in the final line here for your 1 point. Now, if the object is hollow, you draw in solid lines there. If it's not, you erase them, right? Now, depending on where your object is, according to the horizon line, it will affect, obviously, how the sides recede towards that vanishing point. If they're above it, they recede down. If they're below it, they recede up. And if they're bisected by the horizon line, you have the top lines go down, bottom lines go up. So it's all relative to that one vanishing point. Ta-da! Beautiful one-point perspective cubes floating in space. Again, if they're hollow, you draw in the inside. If they're solid, you don't. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the theory and history of perspective drawing, because I know that you wanted to hear this. I love this stuff. And again, you're not getting tested on this. This is only for your own information, okay? So the development of linear perspective was credited to Filippo Brunelleschi, and his years are 1377 to 1446. And of course, you know that that is early Renaissance because you are all Italian Renaissance scholars. Okay, so he was an Italian architect, goldsmith, and sculptor during the Renaissance. And he is given credit for the invention of linear perspective, right? Like an invention in what we're thinking about is like he identified it, right? Obviously, because it's a principle of visual, you know, like if there, like the thing on the right, like the one-point perspective is there. He didn't invent that, but he identified it and started to use it as a drawing principle. He also formulated the principles of linear perspective, which governed pictorial depiction of space and art until the late 19th century. And perspective aligned with larger ideas around order and around, you know, really exploring the environment. Zara, yes, that is amazing, right? These are beautiful. This is Piero della Francesca, and he was one of the first painters to apply the perspective techniques of the architects Brunelleschi and Alberti. So this is in 1470. So we're now getting into peak Renaissance. And if you look at Piero della Francesca, this is not the only work he did. He did like fresco painting of saints and things like that. But he also was very intrigued by the idea of perspective. And you can see in this ideal city, which he painted, the one-point perspective is the main pictorial design element of this city, the city plaza, right? The ideal Renaissance city. So this idea of organizing your space and creating something for the citizenry, and like it connected with larger ideas about society. Okay, in terms of the rendering, early perspective paintings often included patterned pavement, as seen in this painting's foreground, to heighten the effect. You can see how the grid on the tile work, or I would assume they'd be marble tiles here, adds to the perspective. Like you've got the building perspective, and then you've got on the actual terrace here on this public space, you also have the layout of the light and dark tiles give you the perspective as well. Okay, beautiful drawing or painting here. Okay, so Alberti was the first to put the theory of perspective into writing, describing how an artist could get a correct view of a scene by observing it through a thin veil or velo, which is Italian. The idea is that we can get a correct image of some object seen through such a veil or window by tracing the outline of the object on the window glass. You do not have to do that for this class. Maybe next year, no, I probably won't, but it is interesting, like actually mapping this out and codifying it as a design practice, which is what is happening here during the Renaissance. So here we have San Giovanni, and this San Spirito in Florence, which is designed by Brunelleschi. And so he was thinking about perspective when he was doing the architecture on this one. Okay, a contributing factor to the development of perspective was the interest in mirrors. The flat lead-backed mirror was introduced in the 13th century and fascinated artists as it did those interested in optics. The mirror shown in the painting of the Arnolfini newlyweds, Ben van Eyck, was said to have been a standard piece of furniture in late medieval painters' studios. So the mirror would have been there in the studio. This increased use of mirrors by artists generated interest in geometrical optics and provided a way to see a real scene on a flat plane. So interesting developments here. Like the technology was there, having better mirrors, and it got artists thinking about what reflected scenes looked like, right? Woohoo. School of Athens by Raphael. Fantastic painting and very one-point perspective. And basically it all focuses in on the two figures in the middle, and the one on the right is Da Vinci. Michelangelo is shown down front, the kind of guy who's leaning his hand on his arm is Michelangelo, and he's kind of more keeps to himself. Raphael, I believe, put himself in here. Basically, he painted his contemporaries in Rome during the Renaissance as the leading philosophers and thinkers of ancient Greece, okay? In this beautiful painting. And it's on the wall of the Sistine Chapel, in Rome. I think it's actually in one of the Pope's quarters or in one of the big rooms, but it's at the Vatican in Rome. So we'll get on the jet and we're going to go look at this wall fresco. It's painted into the plaster of the wall. Beautiful. Okay, so this, yeah, Al, it was meant to basically align their scholarship and their innovations as artists with what was happening in ancient Greece. It was fascinating. So this is by Louis de Colery, who is Flemish, and you can see that one point is on the right-hand side here as opposed to being right in the center. Great depiction of fashion of this era and how the body is so modified by the garments through history. Those of you that have me for FSH 200 next term, we're going to be talking all about body modification through fashion, because it's a big part of fashion history. This dramatic battle scene, somewhere in the mid 1600s, and the one point at the other side of this. Actually, you know what, this is probably, I don't know if it's a battle or a market. What's going on in this painting? Anyway, lots of drama anyway, and our one point is somewhere about the rooftop of that building right at the middle of the painting, okay? Okay, so far we've been talking about one point, which I want you to actually try to apply in the drawings from last week. Now let's talk about 2 point. You do not have to do a 2 point drawing for me, but I want you to be clear about how to do it and why you do it, okay? So now we're going to talk about 2 point. So again, this is not part of the drawings for project 2. This is for your own knowledge, okay? So 2 point perspective has 2 vanishing points. But simply, you have a left one and a right one. And the only line that is consistent and fixed is the horizontals on this one, right? Because now basically the other lines are starting to get, sorry, the verticals here. The front of your shape is the actual scale dimension of it. Like this is 10 feet high, then this, and I'm going to do it 10 feet equals 10 inches. This is going to be 10 inches at the front of the shape of the vertical here. Everything else gets affected by the orthogonals, by the diagrammatic lines that you use to draw out your shapes, okay? As you will see. So here we have a 2 point, and we're in Paris. This is the Louvre. Whoops. This is actually where we're going for our fashion show after this lecture today. And there are now 2 points happening in this drawing. We're not looking at it straight on, it's now shifting. And what that looks like in terms of a drawing, oops, stay there, is this, right? The only complication with 2-point, like it's great, like it's really exciting. But the problem is your vanishing points, to be a real accurate 2-point, are really far away. You can see that both of my vanishing points are not in this drawing because they are very, very far away on the horizon line if it's a real 2-point drawing. So you get all the information you need, but you have to have a pretty wide drawing surface to accurately put those vanishing points in. But you can see how beautiful this rendering of the staircase is using the 2 vanishing points, right? So here we have, again, our vanishing point would be very far away on the right and very far away on the left to get that. This might actually have a 3-point because we're kind of floating above the city. So here we have drawing one of these babies out, vanishing point right, vanishing point left, and all of the lines are being guided by the orthogonals to those 2 vanishing points. Okay, so the actual scaled height, like if this was a 10-foot wall, it would be a 10-inch drawing to scale, and everything else gets reduced by distance away from us, okay? Escher was great at this kind of stuff. It's worth checking out his drawings and explorations. He was a mathematician who did incredible work with perspective. We can look at him after the, let me just grab that URL. Let me know, I'll grab it after. Okay, so then we have 3-point. So you get 2-point. 3-point is when, again, you're either above or below, so that you have another vanishing point, which is either far below or far above. And it's usually used for comic book art. Okay, so if you're doing a comic book window, you may need 3-point for that, right? So on this one, the vanishing point is very far below. On this one, it's very high up above us, but it gives you the idea of we're now kind of below this object as well, right? We're not level with it. That's the 3rd vanishing point, okay? This is a great example of a 3-point drawing. So we're not just looking at it tilted, we're also looking at it from above. We're floating up. We are now a superhero and we are levitating above our subject, which is gives us the 3rd vanishing point we want to work with. Okay, so there's a 1-point. There's a 2-point series of cubes. There's our 3-point. Oh, there's 4. So you could have 4 vanishing points. This is when things start to get really trippy. Okay. 5 vanishing points. 6 vanishing points. 6 is when you have things behind you and in front of you, and it gets crazy. Yeah, Elle's head is exploding right now. Don't worry, you don't have to do these drawings for me. All you have to do is to get your head around 1-point. Doesn't 1-point seem so much more manageable now after all this? Can you imagine if I said, okay, everyone has to do 6, a 6-point drawing, okay. All right, so that is our lecture for today, and I want to go to mcescher.com so you can see some of his perspective work.